Awesome to have you with us today on the My Identity podcast. I have a phenomenal couple, Jesse and Natalie Weedman. You're going to love their story. You're going to love their hearts. And you're going to probably laugh a little, maybe cry a little bit, but it's going to be worth your while of your time investment that you've made. So sit back, relax, and let's rock.
Welcome to the My Identity podcast, where we like to say my DNA is different. Hear the conversations and stories from people learning how to engage life from an all things new reality. That your purpose and that your identity isn't determined by what you do. This is the My Identity podcast with Duran Mahan.
I'm glad to have Jesse and Natalie here today. I met these guys about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost to the day.
Yeah.
Because we met y'all, I think it was in December of 2020. Because we had just started coming to Hope UC Nashville. And I remember talking to you guys, and I'm trying to remember the very first encounter. I want to say it was at Dustin's house for the first Super Bowl party that we attended at Hope UC, and that was when it's a Kansas City Chief couple right here.
Yes.
So, but it was Kansas City against, dare I say, it was against Tampa Bay. And that didn't end too well. Yeah, I remember that. I thought maybe I would just get churched right off the bat, because I've never really been a Tampa Bay fan, but I kind of always liked Tom Brady just because he played in the league for 70 years. Yeah. And so, it was nice seeing a geriatric throwing the ball around and having some success, especially the older I got. Yeah. It was always fun. But I remember I think it was that night over at Dustin's, and then just getting to know you guys, and then I was able to be a part of some of the men's group things that Jesse did. And then was it the young adults first, or did y'all work with the youth as well?
Just the young adults, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just helped Dustin for a while, and then we've been doing it about 2 years on our own. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I remember my son Ryan was really drawn to you, one of the first times that he had met you. And Ryan's always had a very discerning nature about him, where he can spot people from 100 paces and tell you, I don't know if there's that much sincerity there, But with Jesse, he liked you, Randall Packard, John Carullo, and Jim Weedman.
Yeah.
Who happens to be your dad. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to just see, I guess just start back at the beginning, because I know you guys are not native Nashvillians. So where did you guys begin?
Yeah. That's a big one. I'm originally from Illinois, grew up in central Illinois with my parents. They've been in ministry for a long time. Natalie's from Iowa, right outside Des Moines.
Midwest Unite. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Both Midwestern. Love the cold winters. No, we're I tried to move here to get away from them, and then they
Good luck with that.
Those days are behind us, right?
But then I moved to Kansas City after I graduated college. I played baseball in college. The story goes on forever, but lost a brother to a car accident, and really rocked my world, not for the good. And it was at that moment I knew I needed to do something. So my parents decided to move to Kansas City for a church, because my brother was attending there, where Dustin was the worship leader. And they were like, do you want to come with? And I was like, I don't want to, but I need to. And so I went, we moved with them. I lived with them for a while, and Natalie had been there already. She was attending the school of ministry there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So she had gone there. Her parents are pastors. My parents are pastors.
Okay, I didn't realize that Natalie's were pastors. I knew yours were, but I didn't. Preacher's kids.
Yes.
Well, that's a messed up lot.
Both preacher's kids and both firstborns as well.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, we got a stubborn streak between the two of us.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Something about it worked.
It does.
We had a lot to talk about. I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah. Did you guys start dating pretty well, like right after you met, or did you just chase her until she got tired?
So I'll tell this story because Jesse. So for all of you ladies out there who, so Jesse first reached out to me on Facebook. This was when Facebook was pretty much in its infancy.
Okay, yeah.
And
just a dating site, right?
Basically. And so he reached out to me and messaged me based on this, silly status that I posted. And the thing that I noticed about him is what amazing grammar he had.
Really?
And how well he communicated in writing. And I was like, I mean, not only is he cute,
wow,
he's
a romantic.
Like that, right?
Dude.
So I always tell guys, grammar matters.
It does,
and it mattered for me. So by the time we met in person, because we had just talked online, by the time we met in person,
well, we were in young adult group together too.
So. Oh yeah,
but we had not talked. We had not really talked before that.
But we were in.
You were just sending her. You were sending her love messages on Facebook,
just
kind
on
of
Facebook.
with perfect grammar, no doubt.
Yeah, grammar. Yeah.
Yes. So then, by the time we did talk, I was like, oh, okay, I really do like this guy. So really, from that point on, we almost started dating immediately. Kind of in secret at first because we had a lot of close friends. If it wasn't going to be anything, no worries. But yeah, the rest is history. Within probably 6 months, we were engaged, and then maybe 6 or 7 months after that, we were married.
Really?
So pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all in Kansas City. Yeah, Natalie was one of those girls that did not have guy friends. So I knew that if I wanted to be her friend or anything, that it was gonna be more than that. So or she would have just brushed me off. So.
She knew exactly what she wanted, man.
So.
You were trapped from the get-go.
Yes, I will say though. So one of the things Jesse did when we first started dating is he pretended to like coffee because he knew I liked coffee. I worked at a coffee shop. Big part of my life.
Yeah.
And so after we got engaged, I remember driving by the coffee shop. I was going to get myself something, and I texted him and I said, hey, can I get you anything? And he was like, no, it's okay. And I'm like, oh, are you sure? What about that white mocha you really like? And he said, actually, I don't really like coffee.
I threw up right after I had that cup.
I pretended for you, but I actually got the last laugh because after being married, I did get him.
There you go.
I'm
addicted like I am.
Yeah. You are now. That's crazy because I didn't drink it before Tina and I mean, she drunk it, I guess. I don't know. And I would just be like, man, why you drink coffee? I mean, that's like old people's beverage. Mm-hmm. But then when we were expecting Ryan, we were both on staff at a church. We were youth pastors. And I started drinking coffee, and ever since then. So now I'm compelled to ask, did I do okay with making this batch?
All I have to say, strong is right, and you got it right.
Good. So when you guys were in Kansas City, that's where you met Dustin. But what was your major when you were you in college?
So I majored it was ministerial studies.
Okay.
But my goal in all of that was just to get a good faith foundation because growing up in Christianity, growing up in faith, I had a much different view of, I guess, faith than most people. Like there was a little bit of that. I want to say what's the word? There was a little bit of that freshness missing, and I really wanted to find my own love for the Lord because I knew what was right.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to have a relationship. So my whole goal in going to the school of ministry was just to establish my faith foundation. And knowing that after that, as long as I got that part right, whatever I did after that was going to be a-okay.
Yeah.
And so I went to 2 years of the school of ministry there. And I fully intended to go on to a different city, but I actually found a wonderful community. This was even just outside of Jesse. I found like my people, my community. And I decided I wanted my life to be centered around faith and community.
Yeah.
And so, and then when I met him, it was kind of the cherry on the top.
Just the bonus there.
Yep.
Jesse, did you have aspirations for ministry? I mean, like from an early age, or was it like something you ran from?
No, the other way almost.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
My parents were pastors, and I just grew up, and I watched that, and and they were great. It wasn't anything bad or church hurt or anything, but I was just like, I don't want that for my life. Mm-hmm. And the counseling and the dealing
the people.
Dealing with people just was not my dream, and which is funny though, because I went to school and I majored in sociology, but only because I played baseball and it was the easiest thing to major in. And
general studies.
Yeah, they only made me take one math class.
That's a dream.
All that stuff. But then I actually became a social worker, and so my whole life was people. So no, I mean, I didn't want to, And even now, I mean, we're not on staff at a church or anything, but we volunteer. We've always been involved in ministry of some kind. And, but our heart is more so we want to be involved in business things and making money and things like that to advance the kingdom so that we can have time to volunteer our time for ministry and be a part of the kingdom in that aspect as well. So. But as far as full time or anything like that, no. And when we actually had that talk was, you know, when you have those talks when you're dating, like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And one of the first questions was, do you want to be in ministry? You know, and we both kind of looked at each other and said, no. But it's funny, we're more in ministry than we ever admit. So,
well, I remember meeting you at the men's thing, or not the first time, but when I was interacting with you at the men's thing. I just remember it was like it was an overflow out of your heart. Yeah. Not even necessarily having a position of sorts, but it was something. Ministry was more who you were than a position you occupied, and that's kind of been that way with both of you. I even watch you interact with each other, and your wife's hilarious on social media. Yeah. Some of the posts I remember months ago.
Thank you, John.
And I would show Tina. I'm like, you got to watch what Natalie did here. Check this out. And then I got sucked into the whole bird saga.
Yeah.
The nest outside
of the
thing.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that. I mean, you know, National Geographic really needs to send a crew down just to kind of check that out and everything.
For those of you who don't know, I have 2 sets of like bird families on my front porch, and so as I'm working during the day, they'll be doing their bird things, and so I'll just capture them on video and post them on socials. But I feel like there's a lot of people heavily invested in that story.
Oh, I mean, it needs to be some sort of miniseries. Right. I think listening to you talk, because there's a natural just humor, funniness, for lack of a better term. I mean, it's just there, and you can almost see. I love dry humor, where someone's just in conversation and they say something, and you're like, oh wait, rewind. That was funny. I mean, and that's because that's the kind of stuff. Growing up as a minister's son, we grew up in an era where everything was a sin. Yeah. You couldn't. You know, and so my brother and I had to get really innovative and creative with things of how we entertained ourselves or how we had fun. Yeah. So we would just do the stupidest things and laugh at our own stuff. Wow. And then we had our circle of friends that got us. Usually they were in the same boat we were. Yep. Preacher's kids that, you know, couldn't get out much. And so we had to create from within this incubator or something. And so that's why the dumber the humor, I side split in laughter. I mean, Dumb and Dumber is still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Too funny.
I mean, because I remember watching Jim Carrey and thinking, that dude is making millions by doing and saying stuff that I would have gotten grounded for half of my life if I would have done. You know, why couldn't that have been around? Why couldn't I have had that opportunity when I was younger? And just, you know, British humor, I love, just crazy stuff. Yeah. And all that kind of thing. We had this talk the other night at one of the things we had at church. But so after you guys married in what year?
2010.
Yes.
Okay.
2010.
So
I did good.
13,
yes, good job.
Man. Have you had your 13 year anniversary yet?
So it will be on the 30th.
Of this month?
Almost there. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. I didn't know that.
There.
Well, congratulations in advance. 13.
Thanks. Yeah.
You've made it through they say there's a 7-year thing that happens, and then I guess on beyond that. So y'all are pretty well. You're kind of through
We're those
a lot
old
of that.
married people. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like, you know
I
how when
love
you
those.
first get married, you kind of look at all the people who have gone before you, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Patriarchs.
10 years. They've been married 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
But then you get to year 13 or whatever, and you're like, wow, okay, so we're not very far.
Yeah.
And we have wrinkles to prove it.
But you're writing stories. I love the young adults, the people that you guys are gathering right now.
Yeah.
To your lives and to your home and stuff. And I just, you know, I think it's the sincerity that comes from you guys and the love. I mean, and I watch that. I meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of people at church, but I'm able to observe and just watch. And so you didn't arrive at this point without walking through life and having challenges. So the first 13 years of your marriage, kind of describe some of that, what that was like for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been one of seasons, a lot of them. We were married for a little while, and then we decided to have kids together, and we...
As you do.
As you do.
As one does.
That's a Christian couple, you know. After you're married a month, you know.
It's helpful.
So,
Yeah, sure.
When are the kids coming, you know?
Right. Yeah.
We actually waited a few years, and then...
Yeah, we waited about 5 years. But
Okay.
yeah, I remember having a conversation because I was always a little more hesitant about having kids.
Yeah.
But I come from a pretty big family. He comes from a big family.
Yeah.
And I remember we were driving down the road one day, and I remember exactly where we were. And he said, you know, and we had been talking about kids on and off. He said, I really feel like now is the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling not actually personally ready, but I said, you know what? Okay, let's go for it. You feel ready? Then let's go for it. And less than a year later, we had a baby boy, Graham. And that's kind of where some of our big challenges in marriage and life have kind of come out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to tell that story, Jesse.
Yes, we had Graham. Everything was perfectly healthy, great. And then Natalie had to leave. He was 14 months, and Natalie was gone on a business trip. We work in insurance during the day. That's our daytime job. We work for the same company.
Okay.
And
one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one of the things that we really made a point to do as Graham was growing was to bless him.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of Jesse's big things as a father is the patriarchs of old would actually bless their children a lot. And it was basically a vehicle to bestow godly identity.
Yeah, yeah.
And so one of the things that our babysitters would always comment, because we had several, they would always comment and say, you know what, one of our favorite things that we have ever seen is when Jesse gets down on the floor, Graham would still be in his car seat, and Jesse would say a blessing over him when we left. And then Jesse would also bless him before he went to bed at night. And so it kind of became this ritual and something that we decided, you know what, we want to raise kids who know their godly identity.
Yeah.
And that was how we and he really started.
yeah. Yeah, because part of my story is when I was young, my mom was married to a guy who was not so great. And he walked out on us when I was about 2 years old. And there was a season there for about 6 years, where I didn't have a father. And my dad, Jim, stepdad now, came into my life, and he's been dad ever since. You know, he adopted us. He's been great, but those early seasons were rough, and we've talked about it. And I still had the mindset, you know, at 7 years old, like, I'm the man of the house. You know, like, and this is my mom.
You got accustomed to that by that time,
and I just had that attitude, and so part of this growing up and maturing, I think, of even with Graham, even with young adults now, is my identity has been a father. Yeah. And even since I was young, way before I should have been. And you know, but it's God has used that, I think, because I love mentoring and investing in the next generation. Yeah. Whether it's my own kid or someone else's. And so Natalie's mom gave us a book about blessing your kids, and I realized it was an identity that the niche was all grandmas, and it was all grandmas who were blessing their kids. Right. And I started reading these books, and I'm like, well, where are the men? You know, why are the men not doing this? Absolutely. Every book was written by a grandma or mother, or, you know, something about my kids, and I was like, well, and the fathers, you know, are just babysitters, you know. Right. I'm like, well, we're not babysitters, we're fathers, you know. And so I took that on with Graham. But anyways, to go through the story, he ended up passing away at 15 months. And in the middle of the night, I went to bed and had everything set up. And, you know, he could walk. There's no blankets or anything in his crib. And I just woke up to him lifeless in his crib. And Natalie was out of town on a business trip. And so I had him. And I just grabbed him and you know, like, wake up. You know, I didn't know what was going on. So I rushed him to the hospital, and, you know, they doing CPR and doing everything on him, and just could not bring him back. And he passed away at 15 months. And so the last, you know, 7 years of our marriage and our life have been a a journey of grief, basically, of walking through that together. And even in our marriage, they say something like 80% of marriages that lose a child end in divorce. And, you know, just making sure we're not part of that statistic.
Yeah.
And really, really having to get real with each other and to walk through that. And in the past few years, we've been trying to have kids again and walking through that season of, fighting, infertility or other things of trying to have children again and walking through those seasons of life that we've had to go through together. And so it's just been part of our journey of, part of it brought us to Nashville. 3 years ago we moved here just because COVID had started, and I realized, at least, for me, I can speak for myself. I was like, I need family around me, and I can't do this alone, and we can't do this alone, and we needed to be around family. And my brother was here, and my mom and dad, and so we moved out here to be closer to them, and so. They've been a huge help in our journey too. But
Jim and Sherry were here before you guys came?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was, as you were telling part of that story, the question I have is, you mentioned you guys waited about 5 years. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as a beneficial part of what kind of strengthened you guys together walking through such a tragedy? Had you not had that 5 years invested relationally with each other, I had never heard that statistic. About marriages failing after the loss of a child. Yeah. And your story has been one that we've just drawn from watching y'all, from listening. And this week, one of our best friends, who my wife and I toured with for about 3 years, their only daughter, we used to nanny for her years ago when we lived in Nashville the first time in 2000. She and her husband had tried for years, and finally went through in vitro, and finally had a little baby named Stella about 3 weeks ago. Was born 1 pound and 3 ounces. Oh. And she fought for about 3 weeks, and 2 nights ago she passed.
Wow.
And so just seeing that unfold, and God just bringing me back to the strength that He has put in y'all, and knowing your father's heart. One of the first things I remember you talking about at one of the men's meetings was the Father's blessing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get emotional because I know just the voice that you had speaking into my son's life, and what a fatherly figure and a blessing that you were and still are to him, and watching the investment that you make into the young adults and the men of our community. I hope you see God put that in you for a reason that's just even bigger than what probably our finite minds can grasp. Yeah. And so, we're walking through just from a distance with our friend's daughter, and seeing that, and then just getting a glimpse into your journey and to that, but seeing the people that y'all are, and seeing how you have such a voice into those who have similar stories, and such a heart for people who've experienced that. And yet when I'm sitting with y'all and just talking, not even knowing any of the story, just the grace and the understanding and the heart and the wisdom that God's given y'all to speak to people who have encountered these things as well, but also to the generations coming. And God really has given you guys an anointing for that. And just to know that I'm in community with y'all and with people like y'all and your family. I just made the statement to Tina yesterday, but I just told her, I'm like, how crazy is it that at 53 years old, our most meaningful relationships that we've ever had our entire life, through high school, through college, through our whole life, with the exception of my best friend and his family who live in North Alabama since 1971, we've been best friends. So still got that. With the exception of that, our most meaningful depth of relationships that we've encountered have been in the last 2.5 years since we've been connected to, and you mentioned community. I think that's such a major part of faith.
Yeah.
And then what did having community mean when you guys were walking through that darkest season? I mean,
it was everything. It was everything. Like I can't even say I can't say how important it was for us to be surrounded by people who understood the concept of grieve with those who grieve.
Yeah.
Rejoice with those who rejoice. We had people who linked arms with us, who prayed for us, who checked in on us. Like, I've heard horror stories, you know, from some who've said, you know, I just didn't have the right people around me, but our experience couldn't have been better, in my opinion, when it comes to community.
Yeah.
We were able to be in a body of believers in a church where there was this movement of the Holy Spirit, where we were ministered to. And as some may know, like, when you're walking through grief, there are things that come up in your life that are not necessarily grief related. It's almost just like triggered by grief.
Yeah.
And so we were able to be in a place where every part of our lives were ministered to. And it was because that environment of community and the presence of God, the power of God. And I just can't say enough good things about where we came from, and also this body here. It's like there was just this refreshing as we met people who had heard our story even, and could speak into our lives and prophesy over us and encourage us in our journey. Like, there have been pivotal moments of just, you know, being tired or being discouraged in your walk, and people have come alongside of us at just the right moment, and you feel so seen of the Lord when that happens. Like, the God who sees me is here.
Yeah.
And so it has made all the difference to us in our grief walk.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I remember 2 stories, even one in Kansas City. Our son passed away, I think, on a Thursday or Wednesday. And, you know, I'm at home trying to get all the funeral stuff going on and plan a funeral for the son. And you're by yourself. And, And, you know, you never think you're going to have to do that. And,
Right.
Natalie was in Switzerland trying to come back. And I mean, people were trying to hire private planes for her, and her best friend was over with me, like, we're gonna take care of this. You know, give me the funeral home's name, and just taking care of things. I mean, all the way up to our pastor there in Kansas City we decided to go to church that Sunday morning, and everyone was watching, you know, because they had heard. And I remember my pastor at the time just kind of. I just fell on my knees in the middle of worship, and he came beside me, and he just fell on his knees too, and worshiped. But it was both protective and supportive, because he made sure no one else got around us, because it just wasn't the time.
Exactly.
And he also made sure that the presence of God was near me.
Yeah.
And it was just such a loving thing. And then all the way to Dustin, and Dustin wrote a song for us when he found out, because my brother was his drummer for a long time, and he wrote a song called I Belong to You, and there's a lyric there that says, the enemy can't take what I have.
Oh, yeah.
And
change who I am.
Change who I am, I belong to you. And for a while, I didn't really get it, you know. I just thought, you know, don't let go of Jesus. You know, that was what it meant to me. But it was a few years later, we were at a men's retreat with Dustin and them, and James Galbraith was singing that song, and all of a sudden I'm on the ground, and Dustin's on the ground, and I crawl over and I tap him, and he's like annoyed because he never gets to worship, you know, and he was ready to finally worship because he's always on stage. I said, Dustin, you know what that lyric means? It means that he can't take that I'm a father.
No.
And it was that identity that had been instilled in me, and then I just started weeping, and that I don't have a natural son, but that identity is still in me, and that I can be a father. But it was the community that instilled that in me. It wasn't me.
That's it,
It
man.
was Dustin singing that song over me, and he was good on that. He would, every time he saw me, he would remind me, you're a father. And it would drive me nuts because it hurt. It hurt for someone to say you're a father. I'm like, no, I'm not, dude. I'm not a father.
Yeah.
But it was one of those, you know, guy things like, yes, you are.
Right.
You know, one of those friends like just going to keep pushing on you, like,
Yeah.
until you realize who you are. But he did that for me. And so that community, in both places has been everything.
So rich.
Yes.
I had no idea he wrote that song for you guys. That song is just that, if there's one thing that could be a major player in establishing or defining your identity is tragedy. And to see you guys learning how to grieve and being more present with people who are grieving, somehow in religious circles, or at least the ones that I was a part of, everybody got kind of weirded out about grief.
Right.
Oh, we got to get you guys through this. We got to get you. The joy of the Lord is your strength. We got, I remember, and so many people, I'm sure you guys have seen it, other people through the years, and they repress those feelings and they're never dealt with.
Yeah.
And never engaged the way that,
Yeah, that's a great point, Daron, because that's exactly what it is. In Christianity, you tend to see the extremes. It's either the self-destruct route.
Right.
Or the faith-based route. And it's the joy of the Lord is your strength. Let's get this fixed, you know. But when we cover that up, we don't even allow God a chance to work on us.
Right.
And to walk us through that. And so that's actually something that I talk about specifically in my book.
Yes.
Not to plug.
No, we're going that way too. Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what do you do? What do you do as a Christian, knowing the goodness of God, but something didn't turn out good for you?
Yeah. How do you sit with that?
How do you walk through those questions? These are theological questions.
Right.
And so that's something that we had to work out in real time. Like, what's the right balance here? And Lord, how do we do this right? And not right according to, somebody's like, oh, this is what faith would do. But how do we be real in this? Allow you to minister to us in this place where we are, while also holding firmly onto truth.
Sure.
And so if there's anything that we've really focused on, it's doing those two things: grieving with hope, holding on to truth.
I think that's good. That message is going to resonate so much. It seems like the current generation, the ones moving, one thing about the younger generations, they're more likely to understand. Some of the old goats, and I guess I kind of consider myself in some ways that.
No way.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a youthful old goat, and so on some levels. But there's such a voice that's going to offer hope to people that have had that repressed. They've never dealt with grief. They've never, and it's so calcified over their heart in a sense where they've just got to push it back. I got to keep saying my positive declarations every day. Got to, but you don't have to look any further than the story of Jesus. Man, Jesus was in situations with people. Yeah. He wasn't like saying, I can't believe you're sitting here dealing with this emotion. Don't you know who I am? I mean, don't you know what I came here to do? He was with them. He was, and some friends of mine and I were just talking just the other day about how unforced all of the efforts of Jesus were. I think Eugene Peterson phrases it, the unforced rhythms of grace. And that was Jesus. That when the disciples were on a buying trip, they were all heading to Costco to buy food. And Jesus made the statement, I must needs go to Samaria. And so Jesus goes to the well and he's just hanging out. And the disciples went to Costco, went to buy the food. And why is Jesus not coming to, he's got to get some stuff too, man. He eats, he can't, I know he's Jesus, but still. But he sits there at the well. And then the woman at the well comes. And Jesus stays in the moments with her and he invites her, he engages with her where she is. And then he creates such an atmosphere that she just ends up telling her whole story to Jesus. Yeah. Without any judgment, any fear of shame. I mean, she came at the third hour. I think it was the third hour of the day when it was the hottest, where people normally didn't come to the well. That's the time of day that she came because she didn't want to be around people. Mm-hmm. And so Jesus was there waiting on her. And then even when he did say, you've spoken truly, you've been married 5 times and the man you're with now is not even your husband. There was no hint of shame or condemnation there, because he took the time to sit with her and listen, and be there with her and have dialogue. She wanted to take it and talk about worship. You Jews say we have to go there to worship, but our fathers came to this mountain, and Jesus just kind of saw through that and created that atmosphere where she felt, I can deal with my stuff. I can be who I am here in front of this guy. And I see that with you guys, with people that may come that have learned how to manage their grief. or by any time you tell them, I'm sorry for what you're going through. Oh, I appreciate it, but God's good. God's going to, and it automatically go into the religious platitudes and start quoting those out like a howitzer, But you guys are going to be able to create an atmosphere for people to feel this exhale where I can really actually just talk about how it sucks right now, how the grief I'm feeling. But in that, Jesus didn't just leave her to languish forever there, but she felt safe to be able to talk about what she talked about.
Yeah.
And then turns out she, brings all of her friends and everybody comes to see the man at the well, and come see a man and I believe that's what's going to happen. The fact that God has put things in your heart. I wish that he would give us a better schematic sometimes when he gives us the desires of our heart. And so there's from the desire to the outcome, but he never shows us any of the in-between stuff sometimes, which is probably great because I would want to control it and help him do his job, But however the outcome, I believe the fact he puts things in your heart and then you're actually operating as what some would say an unconventional father. I don't have a son or a daughter of my own right now, but what you're doing in the lives of these other people, and people are watching you and people are being inspired by you. I mean, I'm fortunate to know y'all and to be able to be here and watch this and to see what's around the bend. I mean, I'm stoked. I'm excited. I'm hopeful. And I'm glad that y'all have room on your train to let some older dudes maybe ride a little bit and see that happen. Coming out of this and in the season where you are now and in being ministers but not ministry position, what do you have a glimpse as to kind of where, I know, and you've already alluded to it, and I want to talk about the business thing that you're doing with the book, with the journal, and with everything else. And then where do you see yourselves going, like from here? Because I know God's laid everything out for the next 10 years for y'all, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we didn't get that, Matt.
He doesn't pass that schematic out in orientation, does he?
No.
Nah, but I can go first, and then you can talk about your book. But I mean, for us, I talk about my identity as a father, and Natalie's as a mother too. Even sometimes she doesn't admit it, but there's
a grace about
identity
her, man.
as a mother. And one of the things the young adults have said, and the feedback we've got, is you feel like a safe space. And that's really what I see us moving into. Is the statistics are showing that 18 to 25-year-old group is leaving the church in masses. And the two reasons were because they can't express their doubts or their questions. And and in the same way we approach grief, we turn God into this super spiritual being, like any expression of anger or
negative emotion.
Is like
it's taboo.
It's
worth, you're gonna be kicked out of Christianity. You know, like, how dare you? And God the Father is so the opposite. He's big enough for that. And there's a level of respect and honor that we need to bring to the King, but there's also a level of authenticity that we need to bring, and we have to be able to navigate both. And so that's what I see us in this next journey with the young adults, because we're allowing a space for the questions and the doubts. And one of my favorites was we had a young girl say that I want this faith to be my own and not my mother's. And I love that, because every young adult has to go through that season where this isn't about your mom and dad anymore. This is about you, and how are you going to walk it out with God? And so that's really what it's been for us. And we're still going to do our jobs and have our goals and our work in insurance or whatever it is. But just with the young adults and others, I really think too there is a movement that's being created by the Spirit of God in that generation. Like you said, it's such a balance. You have the older generation who's like, put on the faith face and everything's good. Or you ever ask the question, how are you? If the answer is ever anything but good, then just don't talk to me. That kind of thing. But then you got the younger generation who, it might sound bad, but, the answer is therapy, or to go to therapy, and I love therapy. There's nothing wrong with it. But there is a healthy medium in there somewhere between the presence of God and how do we navigate that. And talk about our feelings, but still manage them, and you know, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where the season we are in that middle generation ourselves.
That's needed though, man. I mean, faith doesn't make you inhuman.
Yeah.
Faith doesn't mean that you can't sit with your feelings and actually say, you know what? I mean, Jesus knows about them anyway. I mean, you're not fooling him. That's pretty sure.
Yeah.
Religion has to have an angry God for it to succeed. I mean, you got to have that because we've got to know how to manage and keep people in line and stuff. But the freedom that you guys are going to bring to allow people to express those emotions, but they're going to express it in a safe place. I love that you use that safe place, because I do. You get that vibe around you guys. Man, Jesse and Natalie are like, I can just be real with all my stuff with them. Yeah. They're going to love me. They're going to encourage me. They're going to help me deal with my stuff, but not let me become defined by my stuff.
Amen. Exactly.
And that's what you guys are about. And,
that's absolutely the balance too. Because that's the balance of how do you express your feelings but not be defined by them.
Right.
And that's the balance of the generations, I think, too. And because we sit with young adults all the time who they're not afraid to share their feelings.
No.
And I love that. And I love that we can have honest conversations. But I remember one time we asked one, like, well, have you told God any of this stuff? And she was like, no, that's disrespectful. Said,
I've heard that. Yeah. How
and
dare
we were
you?
like, no, it's not disrespectful.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
You could do it.
He already knows you want to.
Yes.
I mean,
Right.
not going to shock him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, go scream, go pound the car, whatever you need to do. Yeah, it's okay, just get it out. And,
Absolutely.
So that's the balance, and I think that is where we're going with this. And how dare you talk about it? I know
That's
Natalie's
such a
been
needed, man.
writing her book of grief and loss and all that. So
Yeah, I would just say, like, in general, our direction has always been to build up the body in whatever capacity we have the ability to do that. And we have had such a privilege to do it with the young adults and serve in other areas of ministry. But I think for Jesse, it's always been a little more well-defined than me. It's always been a little bit more general. But anything that we do is always with that bent. Like, Lord, we just want to build up your body.
Yeah.
And we want to be edified. We want to edify others in the way we've been edified and built up over the years.
Yeah.
Like, to us, that's like, how can we repay the Lord for his wonderful deeds to us? You know what? I can build something. I can build up other people. So that's our heart in all this. But just going into the book, that's kind of my heart in the book, because the Lord in different ways took us on very separate journeys, I would say, when it comes to grief processing and learning how to do that as a couple separately and together. And then walking through grief, knowing certain things that you grew up knowing, like God is good.
Yeah.
But what happens when something doesn't turn out good for me? What does that mean about God? And so God just started taking me through just questions and bringing me through and showing me or revealing things in the scripture to say, you know what, I am good.
Yeah.
But you have to work out some of this theological stuff, Natalie. You can't just take it at face value because of this experience you've had. And so I found over the years, I've just been working through that, and I want to help someone else in their journey. And so someone asked me, they're like, so who would you say the book is for? And I said, well, it's for someone who's just starting out in their grief journey, I would say, or who feels stuck in their grief journey as a Christian. And so I talk about the voices that you hear even when you go through grief, because just the nature of how Graham passed away, I was out of the country, Jesse was alone, and just the voices that came at him and came at me, like, that needs to be exposed.
Absolutely.
Because we're not the only ones who are hearing that kind of stuff. No matter the circumstances surrounding your loved one's death, the enemy knows that loss kind of inserts a weakness into your life, or what he perceives to be weakness. And so he's going to push on buttons. And if he can find the right one to push you a little bit closer to destruction, a little bit closer to hopelessness, he's going to push that as much as he can. And so we really had to be aware and work out some of these things in our faith. And that the book documents the story, and then just those questions that popped up, and how I process some of these how I process grief, basically.
Yeah. And he's relentless at trying to find those buttons too, man. I mean, the enemy
Right.
doesn't take a day off.
Right.
And it's, boy, I've noticed that even just in the last couple of years. I've told God before in my bravado, I'm like, if you would let the devil just materialize 5 minutes and let me get out in the yard with him one time. I mean, he's probably, I don't know how tall he is. I think there's a passage of scripture that talks about when we look back on him in future tense, that our mindset's going to be, you mean that is what caused us all the grief all the years?
Right.
So I want to see that version so I can stomp him like a cockroach in the night. But so when's the book going to be? What's the name of the book, and when's it going to be out? And where can people get it?
So it is in the process of being edited right now.
Okay. Is Jesse editing it with perfect grammar?
No.
Are you?
Actually, he was one of my beta readers, though, and he gave me some really good feedback.
Yeah.
So implemented that, but it's in the process of editing right now. It's called Creative Comfort.
Oh man, nice.
And it should be done. I am praying by the end of the year.
Okay.
So before the end of the year.
So you'll have a website where people can pre-order or digital download and all that, everything?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be rolling out all that information on like my Instagram.
Okay.
I'm in the process of I'll get the website up and rolling.
Okay.
So yes, all the pieces will come into place before the book is launched, and I'll definitely put that on social media.
Okay. Now, is that a different thing than the journals that you're doing, or is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's actually a different thing.
Okay.
So as I was working on the book and finished it up December of last year, on break, I was like, I really wanted to create something that helped people process. And one of the things that I remember receiving right after Graham passed away was a care package with a journal in it. And I had not been one to journal previously, but having something on hand that I could just write down some thoughts in was really appealing to me.
Yeah.
And so I started to, what I didn't know at the time, but just document the prayers and the processing, the things that the Lord spoke to me, and how therapeutic it was in the moment. But then also going back years later and saying, like, Lord, like you really walked me through some things.
Yeah.
Like you really answered me in my place of desperation and sorrow. And so then creating a place for other people to process and pray in that way was, to me, like, this is a great companion to any sort of book that I would write. So I rolled those out a couple of months ago, and it has been like my greatest honor in the world to see people that I know, even people that I know, but I didn't know their full stories. Order one and saying, I'm getting this for my brother, I'm getting this for my sister, I'm getting this for my mom.
Oh man, so that's available now.
It's available now, yes, in my Etsy store, and so you can order them there. But yeah, if you know of someone who just needs maybe a little something, has writing prompts in it to help inspire reflection and ask about your loved one. So it's a great place to process and pray if you're really working through some things with the Lord.
That is beautiful. Now, if people want to get in touch and get the journal now?
Yes.
Or if they want to, I know you're like social media wizard, right?
No.
So how can people reach out to you and just go ahead and tell your handle or your whatever that is?
Yeah, definitely. So my Instagram handle is Natalie in Nashville.
In. Just
Natalie
one letter in?
In.
Okay.
I-N Nashville.
In Nashville. Okay.
Yes.
And that's Facebook, Instagram, whole line?
Yeah, so that'll be Instagram, and then it has my links to the Etsy store. That's where I'll also put out the announcements about the book.
Good.
So I do everything through there. But I'm also working with a social media coach or media coach who's helping me get all of my ducks in a row.
Have you found all your ducks yet? You just get working on getting them in a row?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you get free editing though when the husband that lives with you, man.
I know. The grammar
we want to have when the book comes out, man. We'd love to have you guys come back and just just tell us what's going on. Tell us, in the meantime between now and the end of the year, and I guess we could market your grammar skills. You could do some freelance
Jesse
stuff.
for hire.
Yeah, Jesse for hire, man. Word processing guru and whatnot.
It was funny too because I was the writer for so long. I did blogs and the men's ministry stuff.
Right.
And I would write daily devotionals, and I wrote The Father's Blessing,
a
book about how to bless your kids as a father.
So you wrote that book?
Yes.
Is it still in circulation?
Yes, with Pastor Dustin and a couple other guys.
Oh,
we wrote it together.
Okay.
And of how to bless your kids, and really, it's just really quick devotional style. We each wrote blessings over kids, and so.
So how can they? I mean, do they go to her Etsy store to get it?
That
or?
one's actually just on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
It's called
Okay, the Father's Blessing. All right, so be sure and check that out, man. Yeah, I didn't realize you had.
But I was about it for so long, and then God just kind of, when I moved here, I mean, God just kind of gave me a season where like I got off social media and I got off everything and
helpful.
just stopped.
Yeah.
It's like this is too much. And then Natalie just kind of really went for it, and now she's writing the book, and so
there you go. All that grammar training paid off.
I know, right? Like
well,
in-house.
Definitely want to have you guys back. I wanted we end with something now. Since we're looking all professional and such, before we go off the air. The air. Sound like a television thing. Off the air here. I'm going to send it to Bob with the weather. We're going to do something called 5 questions. It's just rapid fire A and B. And I like doing it when husband and wife's on because we can see if there are any conflicts, and if one says, "No, you're wrong, you're misrepresenting." But I'm just going to do 5 questions, and it's just going to be A or B. So you don't have to really get over analytical. Are y'all ready?
Yep, ready.
All right. This is Jesse. New word. Jesse and Natalie version here. Between the two of you, who's funnier?
Jesse. B.
B.
Yeah, I think so too.
So you agree with that assessment?
I do.
But Jesse's funnier because he's like cantankerous a little bit. Like he has this inner 80-year-old that I feel like just comes out.
Like the guy on the movie
that
Up,
get off
the
my
old man.
lawn guy.
The guy on Up with the glasses.
I have this old man humor that's not meant to be humorous, but
but it comes out funny.
I always know the level of people's familiarity with Jesse when they tell me how sweet he is. Because he is very sweet. Jesse is very sweet.
Oh, he's a sweetheart.
But he's also ornery.
Yeah.
So people who know him well say he's ornery. He's hilarious.
But he maintains that cool vibe even in being ornery, man.
Yeah.
So you inspire even an old ornery guy like myself sometimes. All right. So who's the better cook?
I am.
Yeah, Natalie. Yeah,
Natalie
for sure.
is?
Yeah.
What's your dish of choice? I mean.
So I make a mean chicken and wild rice soup.
Ooh.
And he tends to request it, especially if he's doing any sort of fast or anything. You would think that would be the heaviest meal to come off on, but that's
chicken and
that's
wild
my
rice.
thing. Chicken and wild rice soup.
Maybe at some point I'll reach the status where I get an invite when you got that dish. I like
There you
chicken and
go.
wild rice, man.
Yeah.
All right, so Natalie's the cook. All right, so which one? I guess this will be for both of you. Morning people or night owls?
She's definitely morning.
Morning.
You're morning person?
For sure.
Well, coffee. I mean, she didn't have any choice.
Yeah.
She
Yes.
likes the coffee situation.
I was always a night owl, but I'm shifting more her way.
Are you?
now? So yeah.
Okay.
But
y'all
not as
both-
much. She's up at like
I will say
6
though.
a.m. doing her Bible time and stuff.
Oh,
and
okay. Awesome.
Well,
I get up
I-
like 1 minute before I need to be at work. So
I will say though, he does get up early, but I think you can judge a morning person by how willing to talk about issues.
Yes.
In
the early morning.
I'm ready to go
Yeah.
at 7 a.m. or earlier. And
That's
he's like,
probably
listen,
me.
I need you to just.
Yeah. I would be that way. I traveled with Tina and my brother. We traveled in a group together, and I knew I don't even whistle through my nose until they've been up at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Hey, folks, how we doing? You see the new morning paper?" I mean, they'd just like look at me with like death glare or something. So, all right, so we got those 4. Now, you living in Nashville. Country music or rock and roll?
I would say rock and roll, but this last year I really leaned towards country.
Have you
music.
really?
Yeah.
How about you, Natalie? What?
So I could do either, honestly.
Okay.
I can appreciate both.
Yeah.
Jesse has got me turned on to Chris Stapleton lately.
Okay, so you like old school, legit country, like even the younger guys like Stapleton, who is a throwback.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
then there's another guy that Ryan loves. Brian is like country music guru, but I'm rock and roll guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Brooks and Dunn,
Yeah.
Okay.
and I like some of George Strait stuff. But it's more 80s country probably, or legit
Nice.
like Merle Haggard from way back.
Yeah.
But I could rock and roll all day long for me. So
Wow.
I think your marriage is gonna make it, man.
Nice, we're gonna be
think, Yeah, I
okay.
think you guys are good. You made it through 13 years. You're compatible, and she keeps serving chicken and wild rice. I think you guys
he keeps cleaning my coffee
keeps
cups.
cleaning
so
those
we're
coffee
good.
cups and keeping her grammar in line as she's writing bestsellers. Well, Jesse and Natalie, this has been a treat to have you guys on the My Identity podcast. Definitely want you to be back, and just want to bless you with these gold-plated hats that say my DNA is different. And so just wear them with pride and make people ask questions and all sorts of things. So we'll have you guys back, and just looking forward to hearing some stuff, amazing stories from your lives from this point on. And I'm glad to have a front row seat and a box of popcorn to witness it. So thank you guys for being here with us on the My Identity podcast. Be sure and tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. We don't know who the guest is going to be, but you'll have one. Tune in. Take care. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the My Identity podcast. We're excited that you tuned in and you made an investment of your time into this podcast. It means a lot to us here. I want to encourage you to stop by every week, because we've got new episodes baking in the My Identity kitchen, and they're going to inspire, they're going to encourage you, they're going to give you something to make it through your week. So I want to invite you to click the little subscribe button here on YouTube, and not only on YouTube, but you can also subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you get your podcasts on. You can follow, like, and listen every week. As each new episode comes down the pipe, you're going to love it. And we are honored that you spend the time here with us on the My Identity podcast. We'll see you soon.